Transylvania is practically synonymous with pop culture. After all, who hasn't heard of the legendary Count Dracula? He has appeared in books, movies, series, comics, and, of course, who hasn't seen the animated film Hotel Transylvania, where Dracula himself runs a five-star resort just for monsters exhausted from scaring humans? The truth is that the figure of the Count, with his sharp fangs, has fascinated the world for decades. The image of the vampire who shuns the sun and feeds on blood at night is one of the most recognizable in the world. And the supposed home of this myth is Transylvania, a mountainous region that today attracts thousands of curious tourists eager to see Dracula's castle up close. But this land goes far beyond the cliché of the vampire in a black cape. Did you know that there is a village where the sun rises twice in the same day? That there are forests avoided by the residents themselves for fear of disappearing? And that certain weddings there involve decorated trees, parades with dowries, and even symbolic chickens? That's right. The real Transylvania is as strange as any legend, and maybe even more so. And that's what Bello Mundo is going to show you now. Number 1. Location and general information. Everyone has heard of Transylvania, but few people would be able to point it out on a map. The most common image is still that of a gloomy castle lost in the mountains. And although that does exist there, we are talking about a very real region with cities, schools, supermarkets, and even an airport. It is located in Romania, an Eastern European country bordering Hungary, Ukraine, Bulgaria, Serbia, and Moldova. This central portion of Romanian territory is surrounded by the Carpathian Mountains, the longest mountain range in Central and Eastern Europe, with peaks over 8,000 feet high and forests that are still largely untouched. Covering approximately 39,000 square miles, this area represents almost half of Romania. It is divided into counties, which function as states or provinces in other countries. Among the best known are Cluj, Sibiu, Brașov, and Alba, all with preserved historic centers, medieval castles, and a rich cultural life. The climate there is temperate with distinct seasons. In winter, snow is frequent and temperatures can drop below 10 degrees. In summer, temperatures range between 25 and 30 degrees. The landscape changes completely, from frozen villages to green fields with bears and deer roaming the hills. Today, the region is home to some of Romania's most developed cities, such as Cluj-Napoca. But it also preserves villages frozen in time, with horse-drawn carts, wooden houses, and traditions that span generations. And behind all this contrast between countryside and city, history and folklore, lies a history marked by conquests, empires, and disputes. That's what we're going to see now. Number 2. History. Long before becoming synonymous with vampires and dark folklore, this region already had centuries of history. It all began in ancient times, when the area was part of Dacia, a mountainous territory inhabited by ancient peoples who were conquered by the Roman Empire in the 2nd century after Christ. During Roman rule, fortifications, aqueducts, roads, and iron mines were built. But with the withdrawal of the troops, the territory became a migration route and a target for constant invasions. Goths, Huns, Avars, Gepids, and later the Magyars, ancestors of the Hungarians, left their mark there. In the Middle Ages, the region was integrated into the Kingdom of Hungary and functioned as a semi-autonomous province governed by local nobles. It was at this time that the Saxons arrived, German settlers brought in to strengthen trade and protect the borders. They founded fortified villages, built defensive churches, and shaped the architectural style that can still be seen today. In the 16th century, the area became a territory disputed by 3 empires: the Ottoman Empire, the Holy Roman Empire, and the Kingdom of Hungary itself. This tension influenced politics, religion, and even the local cuisine. Later, the region was incorporated into the Austro-Hungarian Empire until it was annexed to Romania in 1920 after the Treaty of Trianon. In the 20th century, it still faced repression from Ceausescu's communist dictatorship, which destroyed churches and stifled traditions. Even so, the spirit of the region survived, and with it, the stories that no one forgets. Number 3. Dracula and the Myths. If there is one thing that put this region on the world tourism map, it was Dracula. A count lives in a gloomy castle nestled in the cliffs of Transylvania, shuns sunlight, sleeps in coffins, and feeds on blood. A perfect combination of mystery, horror, and fantasy. The story went viral well before social media and became a movie, cartoon, musical, and even a theme park. But the curious thing is that much of this fame came from outside. The character who became an icon of Gothic horror was not born in Romania, let alone Transylvania, nor did he come from local legends. He was created by an Irish writer named Bram Stoker, who published the novel Dracula in 1897 without ever having set foot there. It all came from his imagination, based on vague accounts of the region and its gloomy landscapes. Although fictional, the character was inspired by a real figure, Vlad Tepes, known as Vlad the Impaler. He was a prince of Wallachia in the 15th century, famous for impaling his enemies and for his brutality in battles against the Ottomans. His nickname Draculaea comes from his father, who was part of the Order of the Dragon, a Christian military brotherhood, and that's where the castle comes in. Many people believe that Bran Castle, perched on top of a mountain surrounded by forests, was Dracula's residence. The visuals help: stone halls, secret passages, Gothic windows. But there is no evidence that Vlad ever lived there. At most, he may have passed through the region while fleeing his enemies. The description in the book does not even match the actual building. Even so, tourism won out. Thousands of visitors wander through the castle's corridors every year, especially on Halloween, when the party is lit up in red, black capes are donned, and everyone strikes vampire poses. But this place is far from being the only castle in this land. Number 4. Incredible places. Bran Castle may be the most famous, but it is far from the only one. Transylvania is practically a theme park of historic fortresses. Medieval towers, drawbridges, and stone walls appear everywhere. Among the most impressive is Pele's Castle, with rooms decorated like art galleries and architecture that blends the best of Gothic and Renaissance styles. Corvin Castle, with its bridges over the river and narrow windows, looks like something out of a horror movie. But anyone who thinks Transylvania is just rocks and history is mistaken. The nature here is also impressive. The Transfagarasin Road, for example, is considered one of the most beautiful on the planet. It is 90 kilometers of curves, tunnels, and stone walls, passing through the highest points of the Carpathian Mountains. Another highlight is Lake Ursu, with salty, warm waters that make the body float. The place is surrounded by spas and trails and has been compared to the Dead Sea. And in the Apuseni Mountains, visitors will find deep valleys, caves, and forests so dense that they look like the setting of a legend. And for those who prefer more delicate experiences, it is worth visiting the village of Rimatea, one of the most unique places in Transylvania. Number 5. Rimatea. In the heart of the Apuseni Mountains, there is a village that seems to defy the rules of nature. Rimatea is small, isolated, and quiet, but it has gained fame because of a rare phenomenon. Here, the sun rises twice a day. Here's how it works. When the sun appears on the horizon, it illuminates the village for a few minutes and then disappears behind Piatra Secuyului Mountain, a stone wall over 1,000 meters high. A few minutes later, it reappears above the peak. It's as if the morning light takes a break and returns shortly thereafter in a magic trick that happens every summer. But this village is more than just a solar spectacle. It was founded in the Middle Ages by Saxon communities and later became home to Hungarian families who shaped the local architecture and customs. To this day, more than 80% of the population is of Hungarian origin, and the most widely spoken language is not Romanian, but Hungarian. The houses follow an almost theatrical pattern: white facades, green windows, sloping roofs, and immaculate gardens. Many have been restored with the support of cultural foundations, and in 2001, Rimatea received the Europa Nostra Award for preserving its heritage so well. But if all this seems too calm, wait until you hear the stories from the nearby forest. Number 6. Hoia Forest and Superstitions. A few miles from the city of Cluj-Napoca is a place that many people prefer to avoid. Even those who were born there tend to take a detour when the sun begins to set. We are talking about Hoia Forest, known as the Bermuda Triangle of Transylvania. Unlike the dense, dark forests of fairy tales, Hoia has a really strange look. The trees grow crooked, spiraling, as if some invisible force had pulled the branches in opposite directions. Many of these deformities have no clear scientific explanation, and it is precisely this distorted landscape that has fueled legends for centuries. There are reports of disappearances, lights with no source, animals that suddenly stop focalizing, and people who lose track of time. Some claim to have seen figures. Others say they heard whispers or screams coming from the middle of the forest. There are cases where someone leaves the trail for a few minutes and returns hours later, unaware of what happened. And these stories are not new. Records from the 19th century already pointed to the forest as a haunted place, surrounded by strange energies. For residents, the name Hoia commands respect. Many believe that the spirits of those who died without peace continue to wander there. Therefore, it is not uncommon to find discreet offerings left on the most isolated trails. The place attracts ghost hunters, documentary filmmakers, and tourists in search of paranormal experiences. But for those who live there, it's serious business. No one messes with the forest. It is seen as a place of silence, shadows, and caution. Number 7. Population and customs. Now that you understand where Transylvania is located, know a little about its history, have visited stone castles, and even a village where the sun rises twice, it's time for the liveliest part of the region: the people and their customs. Transylvania has about 7 million inhabitants, representing almost a third of Romania's entire population. But what stands out most is not the number, but the diversity. In addition to Romanians, the region is home to one of the largest Hungarian communities outside Hungary. Gypsies, Saxon Germans, Ukrainians, and Jews also live there, each with their own language, food, and customs. This cultural melting pot is evident everywhere. Street signs are written in 2 languages. The architecture changes from one village to another. Religions coexist side by side. There are Orthodox, Catholic, Protestant, and Unitarian churches, even in smaller towns. And it is not uncommon to find families who still follow ancient rituals, passed down from generation to generation. In rural areas, it is common to see carts, swap markets, and women spinning wool on their porches. In large cities, life revolves around universities, technology, and pop culture. But in every corner, one thing remains the same: the sense of community. And that is precisely what gives rise to the region's strongest traditions. Some are beautiful, others are quite unusual. Number 8. Traditions and popular festivals. In Transylvania, tradition is not something found in museums. It dances in the streets, is embroidered on clothes, is spread through legends, and is renewed with each season. Here, each phase of the calendar brings a different ritual, a collective superstition, or a festival that brings the entire village to life. Winter celebrations are the most symbolic. It all starts on December 6th, St. Nicholas Day, when children leave their boots by the window, hoping for candy or sticks, depending on their behavior. From then on, the villagers get into the Christmas spirit. Women gather in the evening to spin, sew festive clothes, and share stories from their youth. Men take care of provisions, firewood, and meat for the banquets. At Christmas, groups of children go from house to house, singing and receiving nuts, fruit, bread, or coins. Older boys wear elaborate costumes. There is the goat dance with masks and symbolic movements, and the Viflem, a traveling theater that reenacts the birth of Jesus. On New Year's Day, tradition dictates that the little plow be made, a procession that crosses the village wishing for abundance in the coming year. At Easter, in addition to Mass and family meals, there is a curious custom. Young men decorate pine trees and place them in the yards of single women. On the second day of the festival, they return to sprinkle water and perfume on the girls, in a ritual that combines fertility, beauty, and ancestral flirting. If it is very hot, the perfume turns into a bucket of water. But perhaps the most symbolic of all is the metelot at the end of December. The residents make a straw doll and burn it in the middle of the village. The idea is to ward off evil spirits and purify the community for the coming year. It is a pagan, Christian, magical, and scenic ritual, all at the same time. But if you think you've seen it all, wait until you see how weddings are celebrated here. Number 9. Weddings in Transylvania. Weddings here are not private events. They are loud, public, community celebrations, and it doesn't matter if the village has 200 residents or 2,000. Everyone participates, gives their opinion, helps, and dances. The union of a couple involves the entire village, before, during, and after the party. It all starts with the official proposal. The groom must go to the bride's house, accompanied by relatives and friends, to ask for her parents' blessing. If he thinks he might be rejected, he can send a messenger instead, someone who is a good negotiator. If the answer is yes, the families organize a banquet where they decide on the dowry, the date, and the preparations for the ceremony. The dowry, incidentally, is taken very seriously. The bride spends years embroidering clothes, towels, rugs, and other items for her trousseau. Everything goes into the famous dowry chest, which is carried in a procession to the new home, accompanied by young people from the village in a festive and traditional atmosphere. On the eve of the wedding, the groom's relatives prepare the wedding tree. It is decorated with flowers, bells, and ribbons, and is led by a couple who sprinkle water and wheat on the guests, wishing them prosperity. On the big day, the embeixamento da noiva, blinding of the bride, takes place, a ritual with traditional songs and farewells from the parents' home. Then the groom goes to fetch her, and everyone goes together to the church. At the party, there is dancing by the bride, a chicken roasted and decorated with flowers, and the most eagerly awaited moment, the public announcement of the gifts. A representative from the village goes around the tables announcing the names of the guests and what each one has given, usually in cash. And all this, of course, ends with lots of food, drink, and endless toasts. And since we're talking about food, what better way to end our trip than by talking about one of Transylvania's best attractions, its cuisine. Number 10. Food and drink. As you might expect, the region's cuisine is as diverse as its population. The dishes blend Romanian, Hungarian, Saxon, and Gypsy influences, and almost everything revolves around meat, bread, and fermentation. In rural areas, the menu is straightforward and comforting: pork, potatoes, rye bread, and fermented cabbage. One of the most traditional dishes is sarmale, a kind of cabbage cigar stuffed with ground beef, rice, and spices. Among the Hungarians in the region, the highlight is gulyás, the famous meat stew with potatoes and paprika, served in generous portions, always under an oak tree in a cauldron suspended over a fire. But the real star of the fairs and celebrations is kurtoskalax, or chimney cake. The dough is rolled onto a wooden skewer, baked over hot coals and covered with sugar, cinnamon, or nuts. Crispy on the outside, soft on the inside, it is a must at weddings, markets, and religious holidays. And if the food is plentiful, the drinks are even stronger. Literally. The most traditional is palinka, a handmade brandy made from fruits such as plums, peaches, and apples, with over 40% alcohol. In many villages, it is served before breakfast, a gesture of hospitality that, according to tradition, should not be refused. The truth is that in Transylvania, everything has a history, from what you eat to what you toast with. And even with all this history, it continues to surprise those who pass through. But what about you? Did you enjoy learning these interesting facts? Tell us in the comments and, of course, leave a like if you enjoyed the journey. Because in the next episode, we may take you to an even more unexpected place in our Bello Mundo. See you then.